1200 horsepower wheel mark. So we'll get it on the dyno, see what kind of numbers we make, and then we'll go from there. The car's been really, really good. I haven't had any issues with the car aside from alternators. I went to a larger pulley on the alternator, which is 2.750, which Rad Industries, Rad Dan was nice enough to meet me there on a Sunday so I could grab it so I wouldn't miss my dyno appointment today. So thank you to him. Their shop is really, really nice, really knowledgeable about cars, which is a nice change of pace. A lot of times you go to a shop and the people aren't really that involved in the car scene. I mean, they build cars, but they're not that involved. But you can tell that, you know, cars are his passion, which is really nice. It's kind of refreshing. So we had a conversation there. I took up probably a little bit more of his time than I should have. So thank you to him. Thank you to James Reese, who is taking time out of the last day of his trip to tune my car. And thank you to JBA for allowing us to use the Mustang dyno. And then obviously Granis Racing has been huge. They've been really, really helpful with everything on the car. I have a Granis Racing T56 Magnum in the car, and Drive Shaft Shop 3-inch chromoly drive shaft, and McLeod twin disc, and then Nick, formerly of Real Street Performance, he's the one who helped me kind of figure out the recipe for the engine when I did the engine, when I did the bottom end, the rotating assembly anyway. And then I think he's since moved on from Real Street, but huge thanks to him. I think his name's Nick Gilbert. And so on 50 pounds we should be good. I don't want to break 50 pounds just because it's a big number. And honestly, my biggest fear is just splitting the intake manifold. And everything else, the engine and everything should be able to take the boost fine. I mean, the engine's built for 1800, so that shouldn't be an issue. I know we're going to be pushing past probably the efficiency range of the cylinder heads, even though they are CNC ported heads from Head Games, and the GSC S2 cams. We can degree the cams to move the power level farther in the RPM range, but I have to have the RPMs limited right now to 7,500 because we're waiting on an even larger pulley for the alternator. The pulley that's on there right now should be around 18,500 RPM at 7,500 RPM with the crank pulley that's 6.740, I think, is the crank pulley size for the ATI Super Dampener. So we should be okay there. And honestly, with the cams degreed where they are, we're making peak power before 7,500 RPM, so I don't think we're gonna have an issue with hitting our peak numbers. But it would be nice later on. It would be nice later on to be able to clock the cams to where we can push the power band out farther and then increase the rev limit. So I have another pulley coming that's almost 3 inches in diameter, and that should drop our RPM down on the alternator enough to where we're not going to be blowing them up. I've gone through 4 alternators, 2 fully built alternators and 2 OEM alternators, and honestly the alternator that lasted the longest so far was the piece of shit alternator that was on the motor when I bought it from the JDM engine place, you know, where you get like the shitty JDM engines, which is fucking hilarious. So apparently Toyota OEM alternators are pretty good, but we'll touch base during the dyno, and after the dyno I'll keep you guys posted. Sure. I put it back to 11. And then we'll just run it and see if it makes more boost.
On the street, this slot is gonna be wicked fucking fast.
Yeah. Okay, so the dyno went really good. As you guys just saw, we saw an in-car of a 4th gear, 43 PSI pull, the outside view, and then I also did a nice little street pull in Mexico on the way home. If you watch the tack, I was getting out of it early in 4th, and we hit 160, which is, it gets up there in mile per hour so quick, you know. The car is just really well tuned, thanks to James Reese. So the car dialed in pretty good. The only issue we had on the dyno was the fuse blew. Well, it didn't even blow, honestly. The fuse just kind of deteriorated on the electric water pump, the Mazier. So I just threw another fuse in it, and we were fine, which seems to happen. I think that area where the fuse is at just gets hot because it's in the engine bay, so I might just pull that section of line that has a fuse, pull that out, since the main line that goes to the relay for that is fused already, so it doesn't really need a fuse in there, and we've been having issues with it. And when the water pump goes out, the engine gets real hot real quick. With an electric water pump, it's at zero flow, you know. So if it was a mechanical water pump, you would still have some type of flow even when the water pump kind of took a shit. But we just weren't seeing enough flow at idle before with the mechanical, so we went to the electric, and that Mazier works really, really good. I mean, it flows like 30 gallons an hour at idle, so, which is cool because you turn the key on. With the car off, you can turn the key on, and the Hall Tech will turn the fans on to bring the coolant temps down, but it also turns on the water pump. So you're actually cooling the entire engine when you're running just in between runs. If you leave the key on, it'll cool the entire engine down to 170 degrees. So it's pretty neat the way all that stuff works. But James Reese went in there and was messing with a lot of the timing tables, getting the fuel nice and trimmed up. We were messing with a lot of the duty cycles on the boost control to try to get it to hold boost higher up. I think the turbo we have, it's a 7687 S400 series Borg Warner. Honestly, the only reason that I bought it was because I wasn't sure if it was going to fit. So I didn't want to buy the Precision 7685 and have it not fit and spend $4,000 on a turbo. Obviously these are still, you know, over $2,000, but I think honestly we need to, if we want to throw any more boost at it, which the car really will only make about 43, 44, 45 pounds with a good amount of load on it. So it's really hard to make any more boost than that. And I think we're kind of getting out of the efficiency range of the turbo with how big the cams are and how much CFM that engine is flowing. I mean, it is only a 3-liter, but I think the flow is just so high. Maybe the turbo's having issues keeping up. You can see it noses over. And we could move that power curve out towards redline if we wanted to degree the cams a little farther, but on this particular dyno session, I've been having issues keeping alternators alive, as I alluded to in the beginning of the video. So we only revved the car out to $8,000, I think, on our upper end. You know, we're still making peak. It was making peak power at like 7,300, so, which we could move out. But if we had a more efficient turbo like the 7685 Precision twin scroll, I think we'd be able to get rid of the nose over just by holding boost pressure better through the upper RPM range. And I think it would take less load, less engine load to spool the turbo. As of right now, the turbo is kind of limiting us, I think, which we kind of figured was going to happen. But I mean, if you take a look at the clearances we have on this compressor housing on the turbo, we have maybe a 1/16 of an inch between that housing and the shock tower. So at least now that I know this fits and functions and the setup is proven, we should be able to get some dimensions off this and make sure that we are at least the same or smaller or not much bigger on the 7685 Precision, which I would imagine it's a little bit smaller. and then we can go from there and put the more efficient turbo on it. And we can just keep this as a backup turbocharger in case something happens, I guess. But as of right now, the car with corrected numbers made like 1,120 at the tire on 43 pounds, and that's with basically pump E85, but we are running the F&L Racing Performance E85 for the high boost numbers, even though we don't really need it, to be honest. And that's an 80% ethanol guaranteed percentage, and then the other 20%, I believe, is 101 octane. So that fuel works fine, but we haven't noticed any issues with pump E85 either. So I would imagine running the F&L race fuel definitely gives us a little bit more confidence on the dyno, which is good. But as far as performance, it seems like we're getting the same performance out of the F&L Performance E85 as we are out of the Pump E85, as long as the E85 content's over 70%. So, and the scaling is pretty much the same from 70 to 80 as far as the graphing is laid out in the Haltech. So all that stuff, everything's been working really good. We have that larger pulley on the alternator. We have an even bigger one coming in, so we'll throw that on there, and then we can bump the rev limiter back out to 8,600 where we wanted it. And then we'll try the car in November, and I'll collect some more data in between there, and we can degree the cams and bring that farther out probably. And then we'll stick with this turbo for now, and then I'll get a 7685 Precision, and I'll make sure I'll get some dimensions from them and make sure we can kind of direct swap everything over without having to redo downpipes and stuff like that, which I would imagine the exhaust housings are pretty similar. Most of those turbo companies use generic exhaust housings, and obviously they design their own internals, but the exhaust housing should be pretty much the damn same as far as dimensionally and location wise. So we should be able to just direct swap a 7685 Precision on here, and with some minimal adjustments, which we have to weld a 90 on the compressor housing anyway, so we can get that dialed in where we need it and stuff like that. But all in all, the car ran really, really good today. We didn't have any issues at all. The only other problem that we have sometimes is the serpentine belt slips at high RPM. So you'll get like smoke coming out of the engine bay, which is never a good thing, but you can smell that it's rubber. So you know it's just the belt slipping. And I would imagine if we went up to a larger alternator, it'd probably get rid of some of that. You'd be loading up that alternator, the factory alternator, less if you had an alternator that could output more. So maybe that's where our resistance we're getting in the serpentine system is, but I'm not entirely sure. I know the Mazir has like an idler pulley on it, so it kind of takes the place of the factory pulley for the water pump, and I know that has some play in it. Probably isn't gonna last too much longer, so we'll just keep moving forward with the build. The car's running great right now. It is hot here. I think our intake temps were still below 120 on the dyno, which is fine. I mean, ideally we'd like to see, you know, as cold as we can get it, but it's just too damn hot right now in San Diego. So but we're at an 18 thou plug gap. I think we increased the dwell times to 3.5 up top on the IGN-1A, which is still really light for the IGN-1A coils. So we don't have to dump the plug gaps down, which kind of screws you over in idle and low range. So there's some tuners out there that want you to, you know, the whole point of running a smart coil is that you can adjust the dwell times on them and get them to fire a stronger spark when you need it. So if you have a tuner out there and you're down at the 18, 16 range and they want you to gap tighter, I mean, they should really just increase your dwell times. That's really what you should be doing first before you start messing with plug gap. I mean, your plug gap affects the entire range of the engine because it's a mechanical gap. You can't adjust that, but your dwell times don't. You can adjust that on the fly in the table. So it's pretty cool. And then obviously when we do our first event in November in Kalinga. I'll probably end up switching one of the axes on the boost table to speed, and we'll be running we have the front wheel speed sensor already dialed into the Haltech, so I can just kind of target a boost duty cycle just based on speed, and that'll kind of be my traction control. But so far the car's been doing so well, even on full boost in every gear. I'm not sure if we'll even really need to, but we'll see how it goes, and then we'll go from there. Pretty cool. So thanks for your guys' support, and we'll keep updating everybody as we go. But as of right now, I think the car is tuned really, really well, and until we make some changes like a different size turbo, different style turbo, or anything else, we're probably just going to leave the car where it's at and run it as is, and see if we can break that 200 in the half mile. So pretty cool.